everyone, welcome to Friday's Live. It's the best time of the week. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm Rose. I'm going to be joining you for our very special Friday's session today. I can already see we've got Rose from a hospital in Massachusetts. We've got Sarah tuning in from Wexford, Andrew in a sunny Lancashire, and we've got the sun in London today. It's warmed up again. We've had some rainy, cold days, but it is getting warm. So we've got the lovely Ellie in the comments today. So do say hello to Ellie. And yeah, we've got a packed session for you as ever. See a few more joining. Hello, Kim from a sunny West Yorkshire. We have the sun in Britain. We do. Joe, it's warm and sunny in Thirsk. No sun in Edinburgh for Ellie. That's a shame. And cloudy in Stoke-on-Trent with Andrea. Hello, Georgia. Hello, everybody. Hot and sunny in Guildford with Sue Moon. Muggy in South Wales with Janet. I think we're generally feeling the heat. That seems to be the theme here. With Pickles, and we've got Tracy tuning in on YouTube from Arkansas. Heather from Edinburgh. Julie in Toronto. Welcome. So today, well, I'm off on my holidays tomorrow, so I thought we'd do a little bit about historical holidays for today's session. I'm sort of in the holiday mood with a little help from the 1939 Register. And continuing on with the sort of 1939 and Second World War theme, I'm going to take a deep dive into a community in Camberwell and look to see how they were affected by the Second World War. But back to our holiday theme and our question of the week. So our question of the week is, what sort of holiday might your ancestors have taken? So that's the question again, is what sort of holiday might your ancestors have taken? So we will come back to that. Just seeing who else is joining us. We've got Shirley on YouTube in South Cambridgeshire, nearly 80. Damien Robin's also on YouTube in Clare. We've got Karen, hello. Andrea, Anya in Fife. Welcome one and all. Oh, and we've also got some exciting news this week. Now, you might have heard about a new social media platform being released, and that is Threads. And Findmypast have set up a Threads account, and I think Ellie will be kind enough to post our account info. So if you are on Threads, then do link up with us and follow us there. But for now, we're going to take a look at some of our new records this week, and it's a good week as ever. So here's the lineup. We've got a brand new collection joining us. It's a fascinating early one, this one. It's Britain and Ireland naturalisations. And then we've got new baptisms from Lincolnshire and burials from Herefordshire, as well as 3 brand new newspaper titles. We've got a lot to dig into. Okay, so we're going to have a look at these Britain and Ireland naturalisations, which run from 1603 to 1700. So these are old, and you know how I love my old stuff. So we're looking from the time of King James I onwards. Now, these records have been taken from the snappily titled Letters of Denisation and Acts of Naturalisation for Aliens in England and Ireland. So this was authored by William A. Shaw, and it was published by the Huguenot Society of London in 1911. Now, the author, William Shaw, he combed state papers and patent rolls to transcribe records and then put them into this book, to produce this collection of names. So these represent denisation and naturalizations, which were processes by aliens or foreigners or strangers, to use that language of the day, would become English or indeed Irish subjects. So through this process, they would then be given the right to buy, sell, acquire, and bequeath land. And I will admit, I have been struggling to say this word. Denisations were granted by the sovereign, and they were the precursors of naturalizations, which were then granted by Parliament. And they both had 3 stages. So the first, you had to take the sacrament according to the Anglican faith. The second, you had to take an oath of allegiance to the monarch as head of state. And then third, to take your oath of allegiance to the monarch as head of the Church of England. So once you had undergone denisation, you were then this is me, and denized. I've been struggling with pronunciation. I was practicing, so do bear with me. So this period in the 1600s covers a really important point of immigration history. So that's the Huguenot migration. So this saw French Protestants and indeed Protestants from other places in Europe fleeing from persecution. So in all, about 80,000 Huguenots travelled to England, and about 5,000 or to 10,000 came to Ireland. And you can see a depiction there of the Huguenot opera from the Illustrated London News in 1848, which was performed by the Royal Italian Opera. So what kind of details did this collection contain? So you've got the first and the last names, the birthplace and the event date, and just one thing to look out for, because William Shaw transcribed these himself, he might have made some mistakes at the time. We're all human. And some of the names have been recorded phonetically. I think Karen's mentioned there that she's had a look and can't find a Huguenot ancestor. It is possible that the name has been spelled slightly oddly. Just one thing to bear in mind there. So they were taken down phonetically. And again, the place names that they're recorded as coming from, they have been recorded in local dialects. So it might sort of require a little extra research on that. So you can see there are some a few things to sort of navigate through this one, but it is wonderfully historic. So let's just delve into some of these transcriptions first and foremost. And on the top left there, you can see Marie Henriette Gage's record. And the birthplace is wonderfully vague. That she's from abroad. Great, but I guess from her name, Marie Henriette, we've got a sort of French-speaking vibe there going on. And likewise, Renatus is there on the right-hand side. Renatus Angier is described as being from beyond the seas, and I've just got the song in my head. Anyway, lovely and vague. Then we've got this bottom record here for John Beard from 1671. And you might be thinking this sounds like a very English name, and indeed he is from Chester. But these are Irish denizations, so he's gone over to Ireland. So there's a really interesting record there to trace that particular pattern of migration. So if you do have that slightly unusual surname, or maybe quite an English one that's in Ireland, this might be able to shine some light on that for you. It's a wonderful collection. We've got few more joining us. We've got Bev from London, Canada. After oppressive heat, we're having a pleasantly warm and sunny day. Yeah, it's lovely to have some sunshine that's bearable. And Daphne tuning in there from Somerset. And this is just to show you what the book looks like. This is the book that William Shaw published back in 1911. It does vary in information here, but there's some lovely details for this chap called Francis Bergier. I've just picked out his transcription there. And he is from, it's written as Moa Herken. I'm just doing a quick sort of Google. I think it's Moerkerken in the Netherlands, and we get some extra information here about Francis. So Francis has been indemnified with his brother Adrian, and it does also say that they're from Moerkerken in the Netherlands. So that would be helpful, if you're struggling to sort of narrow down where the place name is. So that just sort of confirms the understanding that they are Dutch. We also get their father's name too, which is William Bergier. So again, very useful just to click on and click through to have a look at the image. And we can see there's a range of countries actually represented by this record set. So it's sort of beyond France. We've got Danzig in Russia, in the Kingdom of Poland. We've got Bordeaux in the Kingdom of France. We've got Geneva. We've got Calais. We've got it's written monsoon betwixt Flanders and France and the Walloons country, The Hague. We've got Florence. We've got some Italians as well. So really, really fascinating. And back to Britain now, and we are delighted to welcome over 230,000 new records for Lincolnshire. And really excited to see some Lincolnshire records this week. I have a tranche of Lincolnshire ancestors, the Wilsons. And we've got their parishes actually covered in this edition. So there are 250 parishes covered. They are Anglican and Roman Catholic parishes, and the Roman Catholic records are from St Norbert's in Crowle, which is part of the Diocese of Nottinghamshire. And the Anglican records are from 9 different deaneries. Now, these records have been compiled by the wonderful Lincolnshire Family History Society, and we've got a picture there of Boston Church from the Illustrated London News, and I love this image. It's a full colour image, and it was actually published in October 1856, so it's quite unusual to see such an early colour image there, so quite majestic. So brilliant, a lovely example here. And this is for Elias Wilson. I don't think he's one of my Wilson relatives, as far as I know. And this is for the parish of St Pancras in Root. I love that name with the spelling there. And it's from June 1749. And we get a little detail here. The father and mother's name, Samuel and Elizabeth, and their residence is given of the Levels. So this parish is part of the Isle of Axholme. So it's very sort of flat land, and so I think that's probably what the Levels mean here. And yeah, I always like to sort of have a peek on Google Maps, just to go on and go on Street View and have a look to see what a place looks like. It's so flat there. Next new records of the week. Gina's got some good contextual information on Boston Church. It's known as the Stump. Fascinating. And we're on to Herefordshire now. And these are new burial records joining the National Burial Index for England and Wales, and they have been kindly provided by our friends at the Herefordshire Family History Society. So we've got over 10,000 new burial records joining this particular set. They cover 18 parishes in Herefordshire, and the biggest update is to the parish of Kingsland, which is a village near Leominster, and actually the church was built during the reign of Edward I, so very historic. And this collection of Kingsland burials actually dates back to 1539, very historic. And I've got one from a few years later in 1541 for Joan Sibyl. And there's a nice little note there. She says she's the wife of Ralph. So there's a sturdy amount of information there for a record of that antiquity. So some really great records there to dive into this week, and of course newspapers. So let's see what we've got this week. We've got representation for Derbyshire, Bedfordshire and Leicestershire. So joining us is the Alfreton Journal from Derbyshire. We've got a nice big run of that from 1873 to 1935, which is when the paper ceased publication. And then we've got Bedfordshire's Dunstable Gazette, which goes from 1873 through to 1912. And finally, the Loughborough Herald and North Leicestershire Gazette from 1880 to 1893. There's some really lovely local titles there for you to explore. So talking of explorations, when I'm on holiday, I love to explore, as well as lounging by the pool and reading. So that's my sort of ideal holiday. But what sort of holidays might our ancestors have taken? So I can see some answers already coming through on this question of the week, which is, just to recap, what sort of holiday might your ancestors have taken? And I'll come out of this, and I'm just going to scroll through and have a look and see some of your answers. I scrolled too far. Okay, here's Beth. Some of my Liverpool area family members came to Anglesey and Snowdonia on their holidays. I live on Anglesey, not far from known holiday locations with some of my family members. I love you have that connection between then and now, and how often that I find myself in an area that I didn't really know there was a connection to, a family connection to. And, then I do some research and I find out, my great-grandfather was born around the corner. It's funny how I think history it does repeat itself. We've got Anya here, I think, and then from just looking through the comments coming through, Wales seems to be a really popular location. So Anya says, I've seen photographs of my family in Barry in South Wales, visiting my grandpa's family. We did the same when we were growing up. Always excited to see Barry Island in TV shows like Gavin and Stacey and Being Human, as it stirs up good memories. And I think that's a big theme for our ancestors. I see it a lot in my family with particularly town-dwelling ancestors going to visit their relatives in the countryside. So, a nice kind of breakaway, I guess, kind of affordable, and sort of get that benefit of the country air. And Wales, if this is representation. Janet, my great gran, had one holiday. My grandparents took her to North Wales, bed and breakfast in about 1935, and she got rather muddled with the Welsh place names. It happens, but luckily we have our experts like Ellie on hand to help us unravel those Welsh place names. And I've got Ellie. Seen some of my mum's side travel from the Midlands to holiday in North Wales, and then ended up moving there. Oh, I did not know that. Wonderful stuff. And we've got Kim, a wide range of holidays. Some ancestors took caravan and camping holidays at various UK seaside locations. Others went abroad. Florence, Italy, and Rio de Janeiro were popular. Oh, wonderful. It's a nice broad range there. I like this one. This is thinking laterally from Ellen. Does my maternal grandparents' elopement to Detroit, Michigan count? They lived in Cleveland, and I guess going to Detroit might count as a holiday. Well, yeah, I guess. I think we will look at this in a bit, but like holiday, in my mind, is sort of the break from a normal routine. So this is definitely a break from a normal routine and traveling somewhere as well. So I think that counts. And oh, yeah. Noted on my singing. I didn't think I would be singing on Facebook Live, but here we are. So yeah, perfect for being a red coat. I'm in red, so there we go. All on theme today. And yeah, Beth, yeah, honeymoon holiday. Yeah, exactly. And this is nice from Karen. So some examples of, and we're going to look at this a little bit later, using records to sort of find out where and how and when people went on holidays. So she says, on the 1921 census, found my great uncle and his wife staying at a boarding house in Linton, Devon. And they also went to Barbados on a banana boat in 1933, probably for work, because he worked for Fives. Okay, so yeah, again, so this idea of a working holiday too, something that our ancestors used to do. And Janet is on my theme. She's picked up on my theme, which we're going to dive into, is hop picking. So I think my dad went hopping in the 1930s. Later, he and friends went to the south coast on their motorbikes and went camping. Otherwise, ancestors holidayed at other relations' homes. Yeah, so some themes coming through here. Rosie, grandparents and family came from Chester to Barmouth by train, sending on the cases in advance with grandfather's walking boots tied on to one of the handles. That's such a lovely, vivid image. I can really just see that. Yeah, and definitely, my ancestors would consider visiting other family members as their holiday. Definitely, that's my grandfather used to go from Southall in London to visit his ancestors, his relatives in Buckinghamshire, in the countryside. So, that would be sort of it would always just be such a lovely time, and there's such a connection to that place. We would go back and then visit that particular village where he stayed, and yeah, just that sort of change, I think, going out from the city to the countryside. And yeah, more love for North Wales here from Janet. Holidayed in North Wales. They lived in North London and moved to North Wales. So, like Ellie's family there. And so Andrew's been looking at the Alfreton Times. He was on inquest for jury for murder. Ooh, intriguing. And Andrew again. A few could afford holidays. Yeah, many married on Christmas Day, their only day off. Later, Mum's auntie ran a boarding house in Blackpool. Mum and Dad had their holiday there, or honeymoon there. I love that. And actually, my great grandmother ended up running a boarding house. And I actually hadn't thought to sort of include that aspect. So she ran a boarding house in Fulham. So I'm not sure that probably wasn't people going on their holidays to Fulham when it was less salubrious back the early 1900s. A lot of love for Wales. I love this. I have my 2% Welsh, and I'm very proud of my 2% Welsh. And Jean, getting some lovely answers here. I know my father's during the school holidays, helping his aunt and uncle on the fair. That's very cool. I also knew he sometimes spent his holidays at another of his aunts on the Wirral to help her get the donkeys from the farm. I believe they walked them all the way to New Brighton for the donkey rides. Oh, amazing. When I was young in the 1950s, it was usually to rail in Wales in a caravan or anglesey. I love this. And some day tripping here from Georgia. Most of my old photos of grandparents and great aunts on holidays or day trips are taken at the seaside. Men wore suits and ties on the beach. And I always find this remarkable looking at those old photographs. And you're thinking, it just must be so warm. I mean, it is the British summertime, so it has been warmer in later years, but still, it's just that formality that we just don't have today. Sue Moon, I've not seen anything re-holiday in my family tree. One side were ag labs or flymen, so don't think they would have had the money for holidays. And the others were sailors, so no need for holidays. My parents and siblings did caravan holidays. Ellen, day trips to amusement parks. Yeah, because a day trip, it is a holiday. A Cedar Point and Euclid Beach, as well as journeys to local Lake Erie beaches. May not have been a great journey, but any day on the lake is a good day. Agreed. It's just always lovely to be by the water. So, thank you everyone for sharing those stories. And I think definitely we've pulled out some common themes. And I'm going to just explore a little bit more about how our ancestors holidayed. And it is always just good to go back to basics. And I have pulled out just the definition of the word holiday from the Cambridge Dictionary. So a time when someone does not go to work or school, but is free to do what they want, such as travel or relax. And as for many of our ancestors, and I think we've seen that with our answers, that free time really was at a premium. So unless you were very wealthy and could exclaim, like the Dowager Countess on Downton Abbey, what is a weekend? Many of our ancestors just did not have the luxury of going away. But they were able to enjoy some sort of free time and some sort of holidays as we think of them today. And first and foremost, there were Sundays, the original holy days, although that might have been taken up by religious observances, going to church. But with the advent of industrialization, we see holidays becoming more formalized. So you have the factory weeks or trades fortnights in Scotland, where factory workers would have time off, and the advent of railways made it easier to get to coastal resort locations. So we see the birth of the day tripper. And if your time was valuable and limited to a day, you can now make that quick trip down to the seaside. And the Victoria era also sees the birth of the package holiday with Thomas Cook. And by the early 20th century, holiday camps began to be developed. And by the mid-century, they became the mainstay of British holiday makers. And as we discussed, there's the visiting relatives aspect. My mum used to go down to Dorset to spend time with her grandparents, and her memories there are just so lovely and vivid, and such a contrast from her sort of city life going to rural Dorset in the 1950s and 60s. And then there's the working holiday, and I think we've touched on that with donkeys up in the northwest and hop picking, and that is something I'm going to focus on today. And I was going to say in my preparation today that I hadn't really used newspapers, and then I realised I had used newspapers. So there we go. So I've used some newspaper articles today from our collection to just help us understand a little bit more about the hop picking holiday. Now, this is a photograph that was published in the Nottingham Evening Post on the 1st of September 1936 under the headline "Hop Pickers Invade Kent." And so in the shadow of the Second World War, this invasion was not of a military kind, but rather the invasion of hop pickers into the county of Kent. So just to read that caption, because it's a little bit small. So the annual trek of 40,000 hop pickers to the green fields of Kent has begun, with an invasion of caravans, horse-drawn lorries, cars, covered wagons, perambulators, and even London taxis. Our photo shows hop pickers at work at Paddock Wood. So what was this invasion of hop pickers all about? Well, before mechanisation, hop picking was a hugely labour-intensive process. So by the time that hop picking season came about, farmers needed extra help. And this help came in the form of families, women and children who usually came from London to Kent for 3 weeks in September to help pick hops. So it was a working holiday. They would stay in special hop huts and they would work and get all the benefits of the fresh countryside air. And there's some really lovely pictures here from the Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic News of there's a group of youngsters there arriving at their hop huts for the season, equipped with kettles and household utensils, the drying houses behind them. And I thank you. Oh, yeah. I think we'd be worried if you didn't use newspapers. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a challenge for me, but they're always going to be included in my research, certainly. So this picture is from 1943 of the youngsters there arriving at their hop picking farms for their hop picking holiday, and the newspaper, the Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic News, contained this caption, and you can almost. I wish I could sort of do it in the sort of news reporter voice from the 1940s, because you can just sort of imagine that. So it says, hop picking is always regarded as a sociable, out-of-door occupation combined with the pleasures of a lengthy and enjoyable picnic. Fine weather is an important factor both for growers and the helpers, but all being well, we may see the usual crowds of healthy, sunburnt Londoners returning from their season's work. So it was a real family occasion as well. And we can see a mother here holding her baby as she picks hops. And this is a photograph from September 1941. And this is just a sort of quick aside as to what got me interested in the history of hop picking. And I read many years ago the George Orwell novel, A Clergyman's Daughter. So it's about the daughter of a well-to-do clergyman. She gets amnesia, and as part of her journey, she actually ends up hop picking with the hoi polloi. And George Orwell describes this so vividly, and it's always kind of stuck with me. So I sort of wanted to find out more about it. So I would definitely recommend A Clergyman's Daughter, although I don't think Orwell was ever that happy with it, but I enjoyed it. So there is one particular record set at Findmypast that does shine a wonderful light on hop picking, and that is the 1939 register. Now, as you may recall, the 1939 register was taken after the outbreak of the Second World War in September 1939. So that was peak hop picking season. So what I did, I went onto the 1939 search page, and I typed the word hop, simply the word hop, into the optional keywords box. So I do like to start my searches broad sometimes. I guess I like to sort of take the temperature of the search to see what what my results are. Will I need to refine them any further? And with my little hop search, I got nearly 13,000 results, and there were some results that brought out the hop in surnames like hopping or hops, but the other results were exactly what I was looking for. And in the address there, which I've circled, you can see Mountain Farm hop huts in Marden, Kent. So these are the hop huts that I've been talking about. And we've got some memories there from Kim, Billy. Grandad had an aunt that lived in Kent. His sister once took her children hop picking there. As they were nearing the occasion, she realised they would pass her aunt's house. Aunt was out in the garden, so they all ducked down as they drove past in the car. Would love to have seen it. Amazing. So you could use also the occupation search to help find hop pickers at this time. So searching for hop picker in the occupation field returned me over 1,000 results. And you can also see there are some results for addresses for farms in Kent, like Castlemaine Farm in Horse Munden. But it's to those first set of results actually that I wanted to go back to. And to Mountain Farm in Marden, which is a village south of Maidstone in Kent, which incidentally was home to the National Fruit Show in the 1930s. So it's a really sort of fertile place, Kent, the Garden of England, that truly sort of agricultural land. And Mountain Farm was home to a few hop picking families in September 1939 in various hop huts. And you can actually see it's just lovely on the register, Mountain Farm brackets hop hut. And you've got the Bailey family, you've got the Pitcher family, and you've got the Adnett family, all different ages. And it's the Adnett family that I'm going to focus on today. So we've got Anne Adnett, who was born in 1908, Edward Adnett, who was just a baby, born in January 1939, Edith Adnett, who was born in 1918, and Mary Fibbins, who was born in 1876, who is part of the Adnett family group. So a quick search revealed that Anne Adnett was the daughter of Mary Fibbins. So Anne Fibbins was her maiden name. And in 1921, the Fibbins family is living at Riddell Road in Camberwell, South London. So this is their 1921 census form, which was filled out by Anne, or she's sometimes referred to as Annie, her father, Sidney, who was a painter. So the Fibbins and the Adnetts fit that profile of working class Londoners coming to Kent, picking hops for their holidays. And it was really a tough life for many of these people. So Annie Fibbins married Annie Fibbins married her husband, Edward Adnett, in 1937, again in Camberwell. And Edward Fibbins, I'm getting all my names confused. I do apologise. So Edward Adnett was born in Camberwell, like Annie, and Edward's father, Edward, was also a carman. And he's living with his family in 1911 there in South London. But in 1921, I was surprised to find that Edward Adnett wasn't with his family and that he's actually at the Manchester Industrial School in Ardwick. So, yeah, hundreds of miles away. And the Industrial Schools Act of 1857 aimed to solve problems of juvenile vagrancy by removing poor and neglected children from their homes to go to boarding school. Now, these industrial schools were famous for having very severe regimes. They had long days stretching from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So Edward's family, the Adnetts, must have fallen on hard times between 1911 and 1921. Perhaps Edward himself had got into trouble. And indeed, his mother passed away just 2 years before in 1919. But his father remarried, which I find curious. And he's living at his house with his new wife, her 3 children. So he's got 3 new stepchildren. But there's just no room. There's no room for Edward, sadly. And soon after 1921, these industrial schools began to close, and at their peak there was 224 of them, and this number fell down to 55. And from 1927 onwards, they became known as industrial schools. Now let's get back to the Adnett family and their hop picking. So I think the 1939 register there really highlights how it was women of all ages and indeed children who were at these farms in Kent working and getting some country air. So I put together the family tree, or just started to. You can see some lovely juicy hints waiting me there. So you can see that there are 3 generations of the Adnett and Fibbins family at these hop picking farms in Kent. So you've got Mary Ann, the matriarch, Annie, her daughter, and little Edward, who was just a baby, having been born in January 1939. But I wasn't satisfied, because there was one more Adnett listed in this 1939 register entry that I hadn't accounted for, and that was Edith Adnett, who was born in 1918. So I had 2 initial candidates, just doing a search for an Edith Adnett born in 1918, got me Edith Adnett, who was the cousin of Edward Adnett, but she was born in 1915. So we know that Edith Adnett in the register was born in 1918. And this particular Edith Adnett had married by the time of the 1939 register, so she was out. And the answer was it was a bit closer to home in the end. So the Edith Adnett in the 1939 register was in fact Edward Adnett's sister-in-law. So she was born Edith O'Crosier in 1918, and Edith married Edward's brother George, and they went on to have many, many children. So there was this really lovely mix of family members out hop picking. And so far, I've made hop picking maybe seem a little bit idyllic, but to point out that things weren't always like that. And this is a quite gloomy artist's impression of a hop picker's experience in Kent, and that's from September 1897. And this was published in the Illustrated London News. And the accompanying article reads, "The greatest distress lies in the fact that hops are scarce and pickers cannot find work. Consequently, prices for picking are low, and there are an unusual number of would-be hop pickers tramping about in search of employment." So it wasn't this sort of rosy golden period, that sort of Indian summer kind of experience in the late Victorian era. However, by the time that the Adnetts were in Kent, newspapers were reporting quite upbeat that things had changed. And this jolly photograph, I love this photograph, is a world away from the misery that was depicted in that previous image. And this is from the Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic News, which incidentally, this title, Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic, by this point had become quite focused on agricultural matters. So if you're sort of interested in history of farming and the mid-20th century onwards, that's the title for you. So this article tells us how hop picking was once carried out in primitive conditions, but vast improvements have been made during the last 2 or 3 years. Comfortable huts are provided for the workers, sanitation is good, and a hop path can be had for a charge of 2p. Special ration cards have been issued to the pickers, who register with the nearest shops, which in some cases are on the hop fields themselves. In addition, the Ministry of Food is sending mobile canteens, and sufficient cigarettes and tobacco are available. So yeah, I think this photo is taken at one of these canteens, and they're all getting their cups of tea. And one thing to point out, that hop picking was very important in the war effort, and it continued throughout the war. By 1941, there were 80,000 workers in Kent bringing home the harvest, which included the hop harvest, and many of them were women. And they worked through dangerous times as well in the Second World War. The hop pickers of September 1940 worked steadily through the Battle of Britain. And again, the Illustrated Sporting and Dramatic News tells us how some were actually under machine gun fire, and more than one German airman bailed out over the hop gardens while work was in progress. So not only did hop picking represent something of a holiday and a breakaway from city life, it was really vital for Britain's agriculture, for its economy, and for Britain's war effort. And I'm dwelling on the Second World War a little bit here. With a look back at our marvellous set, The Second World War Casualties in Britain, which was released a few months ago. And yeah, I've got lost in this wonderful collection. And these photographs are from our wonderful photo collection. And we can see some bomb damage there on the left-hand side in Norwich from April 1942. And then on the right-hand side, you've got Buzz, the bomb dog, who was the heavy rescue mascot. And he is shown working there somewhere in the southeast in July 1944. And in case you missed this collection, it really is a remarkable one. And what it does is it compiles records from different sources, and the main one being the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. And it provides a list of those who lost their life as a result of enemy action in Britain during the Second World War, from 1940 through to 1945. And the names that this collection contains are mainly those of civilians, but there are some members of the armed forces listed within it too. So these are deaths that came as a result of enemy action, whether they be bombs, mines, shells, V1s and V2s later on in the war, as well as from direct defensive operations. So that might be crashing of enemy planes or explosions of anti-aircraft shells. So you will find within this collection abbreviations to describe the type of incident that led to the death. So AR is air raid, EA is enemy aircraft, or SHL is cross-channel shelling. And you can see on the right there just the fundamentals of what this record set can tell you: name, address, event date, death date, because that might have been different. They might have died a little while after the particular incident, the age at death, and local authority. So aside from this being an excellent collection, I wanted to just sort of tie this back into Hot Pickers in 1939, and I've gone back to the adnets here. So you can see an entry from the 1939 register there, and Anne is actually listed twice in the 1939 register. So Anne and her infant son Edward are listed alongside Anne's husband and Edward's father, Edward Senior, at their home in 15 Riddell Street, Camberwell. So you can see you always get the maps there, which always helps to locate these records. But Riddell Street doesn't exist anymore, so that was an issue. I was like, where is this place? Doing some research, I found that it had been bombed twice, suffered 2 direct hits during the Second World War, and it's actually been renamed. The street is now called Pentridge Street. And I'm sure, researching these urban areas, we do come up against these changes of street names. So this particular area of South London, which is just south of Burgess Park today, was particularly heavily bombed in the Second World War. And Burgess Park didn't used to be a park. It wasn't an open space. It was houses. And after the war, it was decided that it would be turned into a park, and it was to some controversy, because these was home to so many houses, and lots of people had lived there. So it was controversial, because it wasn't initially replacing those bombed homes, but it was in fact creating green space. So I wanted to sort of hone into this area a little bit more and tell the story of those who lived there as we move into the Second World War. So moving from the Adnet family to the Hines family, and the Hines family lived on Commercial Way, so that's sort of Peckham, and Riddell Street, where the Adnets lived, actually led on to Commercial Way, so they would have been near neighbours. And Shirley says that she was bombed in 1944 in Bromley, and her mother was killed, and moved to my aunt's in the next road. Oh, Shirley, that's absolutely devastating. I just can't imagine the trauma of that. And I think this collection is so important in highlighting those civilian losses. And Janet has used it, this collection, to search victims of V1 bomb at a factory where her mum worked, and she fortunately escaped unscathed. So this is what the transcriptions look like, these record looks like, and this is the record for the Second World Casualty lists for Edith Maria Hines, and the level of detail was poignant. And Shirley is saying that Shirley there, she was only 4. Oh gosh, I just can't imagine that. Oh, bless you, Shirley. Thank you for sharing that with us. So we get quite a lot of detail in this collection. For Edith Maria Hines, we've got her address, which is Commercial Way, and that local authority I've circled over there is Camberwell. We get the date of her death, which is the 20th of September 1940. So, in the first few weeks of the Blitz. And the type is given as AR, so that's air raid. So Edith is the victim of an air raid, and she's actually flagged as dying later. So at the age of 57, so it's really, really tragic here. And also this set, it has lots of useful information, but particularly for married women, it will have their former name, so their maiden name. So that will help us to tell Edith's story a little bit more. And her maiden name was Pooley. And we can see Edith living with her family here in the 1939 register. So that's at 216 Commercial Way, with her husband George, who was a greengrocer, and 2 of her 10 children. So they were a really big family, the Hineses. So they've got 2 of the children living with them there, James and George Jr. And she's actually listed as Maria E here. So it does make it harder to find when those first names are swapped around. But in other documents, we see Edith as her given name. So I've sort of gone with Edith here in this instance. And really tragically, Edith wasn't the only Hines in Camberwell to lose their life on September the 20th, 1940 in an air raid. And you'll see 4 other names listed alongside Edith. So there's Edith Maureen Hines, who was only a child, as was John George Joseph Hines and Sidney Clarence Hines, alongside Emily Hines, who was in her 20s. And I got these goosebumps when I was researching. You know these researchers' goosebumps, right? Like you can't write it. And I was looking for the other Hines. So I had Edith Hines there at home in Camberwell in 1939. And I was looking for Emily Hines, who was Edith's daughter-in-law in 1939. So Sidney and Edith Jr., also listed as victims of the air raid, were Emily Hines's children and Edith Hines's grandchildren. And guess what they were doing in 1939? Well, they, like the Adnets, who lived only a few streets away, were hot picking. And they were hot picking in Marden, so very near to the Adnets, at the Henshurst hop huts. And that sort of, it's a coincidence, I suppose, but I guess shows how how prevalent hot picking was at that time, that these communities would go to Kent, and maybe they'd gone together. I don't know, maybe they knew each other. And for me, I just found this really, really, really especially poignant, because it was their penultimate September captured here in 1939. So this was a year before they were killed in that air raid. Maybe they hadn't gone to Kent for hot picking that summer. Maybe they decided to stay in London. Whatever had happened. So I really hope they did have that lovely summer, late summer in September 1939, as described in those newspaper reports. So yeah, it is absolutely heartbreaking there. But there was another Hines on the list as well, and that was John George Joseph, who was 11 when he died, and he was the cousin of young Sidney and Edith, and the grandson of Edith Hines. Through her son John, and his address actually wasn't given as Commercial Way, but he did. It was an address in Camberwell. So I wonder whether John was at the house of his grandparents when the air raid happened, or perhaps there was an air raid on his own house. That would have been a horrible coincidence, given that his grandparents' house had suffered a hit. So it's absolutely tragic to sort of see the impact here on the Hines family and the loss there. So I've worked on their tree as well, and see the 10 children there, but how many were killed in an air raid in that community of Camberwell is absolutely tragic. So I do apologise for sort of bringing us to sort of a more somber note when we've been talking about all the joys of holidays and those kind of memories, but I think it is a really important sort of reminder to us to enjoy those moments that we share with our families, the holidays that we go on, and those really special moments in life. And we have these collections that shine a light on those lives that were sadly lost, and we can remember them through these collections on Findmypast. And I can just see before finishing up today, I see some more questions coming through. So let's come out to that. And Andrew says, and then I'm going to look into this because I've looked into hot picking, and maybe my next one needs to be potato picking. It was still the name for autumn half term when I started school. Oh, I love that. That's wonderful. That's my next research topic there, Andrew. Thank you. um, and Daphne, as a child post-war, we never had a holiday. However, living right by the coast in Poole, Dorset, we did have trips to Sandbanks and Bournemouth Beach. Oh, lovely. Mum always took a sliced loaf of mother's fried bread and filled the sandwiches with Heinz sandwich spread. I feel like that sounds like something delightfully out of like Famous Five. My mum did quite an interesting holiday in 1959, and my grandparents decided that they would drive through Europe. So they were driving through Austria and Germany, sort of quite soon after the war, relatively soon after the war, and she's got a wonderful scrapbook from that time. And I think there is in this scrapbook, she's actually put in a chocolate from that time, and it's still there. Yeah, wonderful stuff. So we've got Anya there. She's also had family killed in air raid, cousins of mine. The husband was my blood relative, and he and his wife and mother-in-law all died. Very sad. No, it's absolutely, yeah, so tragic. So, thank you everybody for joining me today for our walk through holidays and through the Blitz as well. I hope you all have lovely weekends, and I will see you all very soon. So thanks again for joining us. Take care. Goodbye.